Slavyansk is a small city in eastern Ukraine. Through God's grace, it has become the epicenter of a national adoption movement that has spread throughout Ukraine and to the rest of the former Soviet Union.
30 years ago, when we were still under communist rule, God gave us a vision for our city, that Slavyansk would become a city of refuge. At that time, our church had only 15 members. Now we have a large church, and one of our main goals is serving abandoned children and orphans. 11 years ago, we began soup kitchens to feed the hundreds of street children in Slavyansk. These first efforts led us to open a Christian orphanage, which has been the home to hundreds of children over the past 10 years. After a few years of running our orphanage, we realized that the best place for children is not in an institution, but in a family. God began to open our eyes to the importance of adoption.
We're here in Ukraine with the Potopova family.
Настя,
Лена,
Игорь, Марина,
Сергей.
Тимофей.
The family, the parents have been Christians 5 years, and after they've been Christians for a year, they felt like God really showed them that they needed to adopt orphans. They don't have any of their own biologic kids, but now they have 4 kids in their family. They live in a 1-bedroom house. You can tell that this is really a happy, loving family.
One of the sons, Timofey, when he was being adopted, they had to take like a blood sample for him, and he was asking his parents, why are you having to take my blood? And they explained, well, any kid who's adopted, you have to take a blood sample. And he said, oh, well, you can have all of my blood if it means more kids will be adopted. So these kids are really happy to be in a family, and you can really tell they have a loving relationship with each other, and they all love God as well.
We adopted our first daughter 7 years ago. Since then, we've adopted 4 more children. Many look to our family as an example, and in the years since our first adoption, over 100 children have been adopted into families by members of our church.
Adoption in Ukraine is surrounded by a lot of myths and fear. My wife and I shared these fears until one day we actually held an abandoned baby in our arms. He was only 3 weeks old. He looked up at me, and I realized that he had no one in the world to care for him. It was like his eyes were begging me to believe that everything would work out if we brought him home with us. We took him from the hospital that day, and he became our son.
Today, that little baby is almost 6 years old. He's a beautiful, smart little boy. Instead of being a bad experience, adopting our son has been one of the highlights of our life. After adopting him, we went on to adopt 2 older children.
We're here with Oleg and Svetlana. They're adopted parents and also pastors in a church. We asked them how they decided to adopt children and how people in their church reacted.
I at first was a volunteer in a children's hospital, and I saw a little girl. And I couldn't think of anyone else other than that little girl. But someone else had already decided to adopt the little baby I saw. And I asked God that if this baby was the baby for us, that He would give me a sign and that He would show the people who had originally planned to adopt her that they should adopt another child. God decided not to wait, and in 1 week I got a phone call. Tamara called me, and she told me word for word exactly what I had been praying.
I asked them to tell us how people in their church reacted when they decided to adopt.
After we adopted our daughter Masha, a lot of the people in our church were unsure of how to react. A lot of our friends actually tried to talk us out of adopting. But we've seen over the last few years a big change. The same people who are telling us not to adopt have actually begun adopting children themselves. One of the really resistant families to us adopting initially have now adopted 5 children of their own.
He asked how many people now in your church have adopted children.
24.
And they said out of 54 people in their church, 24 of them are adopted or foster children. Also, we're asking about the different training conferences.
So I really want to thank Home for Every Orphan for all they've done in planning these conferences. They've been a big help and encouragement for families who have adopted children. As a pastor, I get to see all the different problems and the stress that families are going through with their children, and it's great to see opportunities for them to receive different training. And I personally understand the different problems that these families go through. It's really important help, and we really need these conferences.
Okay, so this is Dima. My name's Andrew, that's right. I'm Andrew, and this is Dima, and he's 3 years old. His mother and father adopted him 2 months ago. A ty что ты скажешь? Скажи. Скажи. That was his version of Hello America.
Slavyansk has truly become a city of refuge for orphans. We feel that God has given us the task to change not only the mindset of our city about orphans, but also the mindset of our nation and the surrounding countries. We have joined a movement called A Home for Every Orphan that has already led to the placement of over 1,000 orphans and families in the past few years, and we believe it will lead to many more children finding forever homes. In addition to helping children find homes, we also provide long-term counseling for at-risk families so that they are able to keep children in their homes.
A Home for Every Orphan is a partnership among 10 groups in Ukraine, Russia, and the United States. We all share the same heart and the same vision for getting children into families. 10 years ago, national adoption wasn't even on the radar. But in the past 5 years, churches across Russia and Ukraine have caught the vision to care for their own orphans. It's our desire to be a support for this great national movement. We love that this movement wasn't transplanted from the United States and brought to Russia and Ukraine, but it really started at a grassroots level here. Our partners in Ukraine and Russia have incredible vision, not only to provide motivation towards adoption, but to also do all the follow-up support and training that families need once they've adopted to be able to keep children in their families.
We're here with the Zholba family. This is Nadia and Sergey, and this is Daniel, and this is Diana. And they were just telling us their story of how they came to adopt. About 2 years ago, they felt a real calling to adopt, but they didn't have a house to live in. So it came about that their grandmother died and gave them this house, and they were able to move in here. And originally they were supposed to adopt a baby girl, but they went through all the documentation and all of the training, and then it turned out that they weren't able to adopt her because some relatives had decided to adopt her. So the government suggested that they take 2 children instead, and Danielle and Diana were waiting and ready, and they have been so happy living in this house all together. And they are doing very well. They were adopted last September, and so they're getting ready to celebrate their anniversary in this next September, and they're very excited about this.
They told us that the husband of the family, they went to a conference recently in Kiev for encouragement for foster parents, and it really, one of the topics was how fathers should relate to their daughters, especially their adopted daughters, and it has completely changed how the father has related to the children. So that's a real encouragement about the training they can get at some of the conferences.
Yeah, shows how important it is.
Yeah.
One of the best tools we have to spread the vision of national adoption is mass media. So far, we have produced films, video clips, commercials, and talk shows, which encourage people to open their eyes to the orphans all around them. It is our dream to produce a TV series that could change the way our nation views orphans and would inspire many to have faith that they could play a part in changing the fate of a child. It is our dream that someday there would be empty orphanages across Ukraine and Russia, thanks to Christians overcoming their fears and taking orphans into their families. Our dream is beginning to come true in Slavyansk. May there be many more cities to follow in its footsteps.
We are looking for people to partner with us in this great vision, the rescuing of children across the former Soviet Union. So far, we have seen over 1,000 children receive families through the work of our partnership, but hundreds of thousands more orphans wait with outstretched hands, calling us to faith and action. Will you join us in responding to God's call to care for the orphan?